Hi from me, Jared Epstein, and welcome to another episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. Later on in the show, Yochi Ress will join us for another installment of Sound, Harmony and Kabbalah. We also learn more about the Jewish community in the Ukraine and how they've been coping with the war. But first, the Gospel according to Wonder B. Lazarus is described as a furiously funny feminist take on the wandering Jew. Let's find out more from the author herself, Lynn Joffe.
My name is Lynn Joffe. I am probably 48 ways Lithuanian, much to my pride. So I'm a little Jewish girl. I was born in London. I was educated and raised in Scotland, where the Jewish community was pretty much non-existent. And it was really only when I came to South Africa for holidays, because my parents were South African, and then my grandfather was a big doyen at the Reform synagogues. And that was how I was kind of raised into Jewishness through, you could call it the liberal side of Judaism. But I have a great respect, and through the book, a great respect for all aspects of our tribe. The Gospel according to Wonder B. Lazarus is sort of billed as a serio-comic work of literary fiction. But the real reason that I wrote the book was I wanted to see from a Jewish angle what the myth of the wandering Jew was all about, which is an anti-Semitic glyph, comes from the Middle Ages, invented by monks, rear-engineered back to the crucifixion of Jesus. And so I have my character, who's Wanda, B stands for But, which is daughter of Lazarus, as the eponymous biblical character of Miriam, who was Lazarus' sister. So when I was trying to look at, she's accidentally cursed with immortality, okay, that's the kind of spoiler alert, by Rav Yossi at the time of the crucifixion, because the chalice that she was holding was a poisoned chalice. So I'm kind of transgressing over the interpretation of anti-Semitism, if you'd like, since the time of the birth of Christianity and probably earlier. And my time-traveling protagonist wanders through the ages as Wonder B. Lazarus. In other words, she's rising, if you like, from the dead over and over and over because she was cursed with immortality. When I started, I thought it would be nice to do kind of memoir of my time, because I've had an interesting life and came into South Africa at such a young age, and the ancestors, and kind of I wanted to clothe this myth in a number of episodes. And then I found this character. And I wanted to create her. She was originally Wanda Luftalowski or Lustalovsky, and it didn't kind of fit. And there's something creatively that happens when you have a character. And the moment that I discovered Wanda, or she discovered me, it stopped being memoir and it started to become fiction. And then I could say anything, go anywhere, do anything. And a lot of it is related to my experiences in life. I mean, I have not been chopped up into the River Never in the middle of Russian winter, but I have slept in a car around the spare tire in Canada one time. So in a sense, and it's a writer's thing, it's a creative thing, is if you can take your experience and kind of transform it in your imagination and a lot of discipline. Somehow, everyone says the story writes itself. It doesn't really, but you meet the story and you meet the character. And Wanda is a kind of really exaggerated version of aspects of me. But of course, I'm a lot more mature than she is. Hence the ability to write the book at all. Why did I write a Jewish book? Well, my childhood was very unreligious and very secular. And because it is my culture, it is my DNA, it is my ancestry and my descendants, I wanted to explore what is normally probably called the Jewish question, but not the Jewish question of extermination, the Jewish question of why anti-Semitism. I encountered this when I was 6 years old in my primary school, where I was asked, "Are you a Jew?" And I didn't even know what that meant. And I went to my mommy and I said, "Mummy, am I a Jew?" And she said, "Yes, darling, you're a Jew." And I went back to school and I said to Lindsay Haddon, "I am a Jew." And I didn't quite know what that was. And I think that maybe all of these years later, what does my Jewishness mean to me? It doesn't mean necessarily 11 babies and, walking to shul every Saturday. There's such a spectrum of Jewish people, and I actually realized that I'm quite proud to be that. I've been quite ashamed on a level of my non-religiosity, but my creativity has a history, and the history goes back to Don Quixote, who in actual fact apparently was a converso Jew, which were who were Jews who converted to escape the anti-Semitic laws. And in a kind of way, maybe I've been hiding in plain sight all my life. I am a Jewish person. I am a Jewish writer. And now that I don't represent the entire, context of my people, but this is the kind of Jew I am. I'm a funny, female, won't go to the back of the shul again type of feminist. I had to know what my feminist positionality was, which conflicts to a large degree with the sayings of the fathers. But what about the sayings of the mothers? And maybe perhaps if I can inspire anyone or reassure anyone who isn't coming from the deepest side of the Orthodox community, that it's okay to be a woman and a Jew and express yourself in that manner. When you publish, I think you become part of a canon. And being a Jewish person and writing about a Jewish character, it's a book about a Jewish character. Because it is of my culture and because of the roots that I have, because of the curiosity that I have had to say, I'm not an Orthodox woman. How else can I claim my identity as a writer, as a human, as a woman, as an empowerment person? So, in a sense, the way I have written Wanda is that she is a woman of self-empowerment. But it feels like my destiny, and that sounds so coy, but it was almost my destiny to be this age of this maturity in South Africa, to write a book about a feminine character throughout history who has her own voice. And she's Jewish, and so am I. And that is where Wanda and I are joined at the hip forever.
As we should know by now, there are Jewish communities all around the world. It's difficult to get exact numbers, especially due to ongoing conflict, but the Jewish community in the Ukraine has roughly 200 to 300,000 people. Today, we learn more about the Jewish community in the Ukraine and how they've been coping with the ongoing war.
I would never call myself a religious person, but I would rather say that, and this is something that resonates me at my current workplace, is that we are trying to cultivate the tradition, trying to cultivate the knowledge about it, and then it's up to me how to employ that knowledge.
About my Jewish story, it started when I was 13, and I somehow accidentally went to the Jewish camp, and I didn't even know it was Jewish. And after that, I became very active in my Jewish community. Like, it happened really quickly. I was attending every event for teenagers, for the whole community, and maybe in like 2 years I was working there as a volunteer and doing these events for other people.
Overall, the Jewish capital is considered to be Kiev, Dnipro, and Odessa. Those three cities, they always had really strong Jewish elite, who late then became a part of the local parliaments, became mayors and so on, and they are really well-known people in those cities.
Jewish community in Ukraine is very modern. It's a lot about non-formal education, and that's what really changed my life, my sister's life. It really changed a lot. And in Ukraine, like, it's quite a big country, I guess, but we have so many events together, like inside the regions, inside some parts of Ukraine, and sometimes it's like big events where, for example, teens come 3 times a year from all over the Ukraine. The young people, they meet like 4 times a year, like somewhere for a week or 2, and that's crazy. Like, I know a lot of Jewish people from all over the Ukraine and all over the other countries that can also participate in that events, and that's what I like about it. I can go anywhere and call someone, and like, I know a lot of people. That's amazing.
From the very first day of the war, there was no such a thing as Ukrainian, Jewish, Russian, or any other division. So there are people who were in need, and there were people who could help those who are in need. And that's how everybody got really, really united around the idea of getting things done. Make sure that those who need supplies, they have them. And then we're gonna think who is Jewish, Ukrainian, Russian, or any other nationality. Moishe House itself and our residents all over Ukraine, they were collecting humanitarian aid. They were distributing it to those who are in need. Dnipro residents, they decided to host at their place people who lost their houses, so everybody was trying to accommodate each other in any possible way in order just to make sure that this pain, the level of it, doesn't go higher. And Kiev Jewish community and Moishe House Kiev, from the very first day, they're like, we have bombings outside of the windows. And then I see Moishe House Kiev stories saying that, hey folks, everybody who needs any kind of help, support, hot meal, or just a place to stay, please come over here. We are announcing our home as a safe haven. For 3 months, they were hosting 10 people. Basically, that's a really great benefit of Moishe House apartments. You are able to provide housing to actually those who indeed need it, especially in times like this. I didn't expect any of Moishe House residents to be this brave, and they still think they're not brave. They still think that this is something like, okay, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just rockets, war, and we offer people food and comfort. It's nothing. We didn't do anything. Well, that's what they call bravery.
And there's the Moishe House, who helps a lot. That's the organization who hosts young Jewish people, and they invite a lot of people to the events, and it's like more than 200 houses all around the world. And this community, this organization really helps a lot to all of the Ukrainian residents. Like, they provided the help that we need. It's the first thing. And the second thing is that, of course, if you're in any city where there's a Moishe House, of course, you can go there, which is very helpful. And Moishe House made a retreat in Europe, in Czech Republic. It's not like all about Ukraine and Ukrainians and stuff like that, but I was there, and my roommate from Kharkiv also was there. And I just wanted to say that there was the first normal day in my life where I could just talk to people, meet new people, relax a little. It was very emotional, very helpful, and that was just wonderful. And I'm very thankful to all of the organization all around the Ukraine and the world, but Moishe House made so much for me, and I'm really very thankful to them.
My whole Jewish experience started at Hillel Kiev, and I would say that would be the place, if I go for a public celebration, that would be the place where I'm gonna spend that public holiday at. But I have to tell you that this war, this whole thing, this whole stress that we all had, it helped me it brought me back to the idea that I still need to I shouldn't neglect weekly rituals like Shabbat and Abdullah. I shouldn't be because it's highly possible when you live under the bombs, there may be no next Abdullah, no next Shabbat to make it up for the one that you've missed. And I would say that the war taught how to continue practice what our ancestors were practicing, and without getting into to religious stuff, because I'm not that kind of a person. But living with this idea in my head that it helps to taste every single moment, and not to just skip it, not to scroll the feed. But if we're having Shabbat, we're having Shabbat. If we are having Abdullah, we are here. We are being present there.
The first thing about what Jewish community are doing right now is a lot of volunteering job. they're helping people with food, with medicines, and everything they need, everything they can provide, they are doing it. And there is one thing that Jewish community are somehow, they like doing everything they can, and they are still working. They are making events, if it's possible, they are doing it offline. In my city, it's online, but the most wonderful and important thing for me was, since the first day we had like these calls all together, and community made it happen. And that is wonderful, because that helped so much to not lose your mind and to not lose your believing that everything will be all right soon, and that you will see these people finally. And that I'm very thankful to Jewish community for that. I'm really doing.
It's almost that time to say goodbye, but not before another lesson from Yochi Res and our Sound, Harmony and Kabbalah series. This week, we learn more about conscious listening and compassion.
There's an incredible sound researcher called Julian Treasure who has a TED Talk. And he explains the serious problem that we are losing our ability to listen deeply, to listen consciously. This is being eroded for many reasons. One of the reasons is that we don't have to listen consciously that much, because we have so many different ways that we can record. The premium on conscious listening is just not that great anymore. Another reason is because the great distractions and cacophony of noise, both auditory and visual, is so immense that we aren't able to pay attention and really listen in a deep way. And conscious listening is really at the heart of all spiritual traditions, if you think about it. And in Judaism, we don't have to look any further than the grand declaration of faith of Shema. Listen, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. And when we think about listening deeply, listening consciously, this is the gateway to understanding and empathy and compassion. When we stop listening to each other, there's a lot of listening going on. Like you see people walking around in the street with their, earphones in, but we're not listening to each other. When we stop listening to ourselves deeply, internally, and cultivating the ability to listen to each other, we don't understand each other, and we don't have compassion, and really terrible things can happen as a result. So we really can develop our listening and our skills of listening in many different ways. And Julian Treasure speaks about this in his TED Talk. You can look it up. But one of the really interesting, fascinating ways is to just tune in and hone your listening to all the sounds around you. The universe is sound. It's a mixture of soundscapes. It's everywhere. And in Kabbalah, we are taught, actually, that the universe was not just spoken into creation, as we know in the text of the utterances of creation in Genesis, but actually the universe was sung into creation. And that primordial vibration and sound, which is really embodied in a certain way in our breath, which is the source of our speech and sound that we emit and emanate, that is really, in many ways, this source level that we can tap into when we listen in a very deep way and cultivate that ability to listen consciously. And when we do that, we can listen more deeply to others who are different and not be afraid of them, but really grow from each other and dance with each other. When we talk about compassion, we're really talking about a mindful position to step back and not be trapped in the way that we see the world from the filters and lenses of our mind. This is my story and I'm sticking to it. Kabbalah is really all about the map of the flow of energy from our mind, as we said earlier, to our heart and then into our body and manifestation. And it all starts with letters of our mind, the creative potential that we have, and how we see things and frame things literally shapes our reality. Our narratives become our reality. So we have to be very careful to stay free and to leave our personal Egypt, which in Hebrew means narrow confines. Mitzrayim comes from the root tsar, which is narrow. In order to break free from that, which is the central motif in Judaism, leaving Egypt is about as core as you can get. Twice a day, every day, we speak about the leaving of Egypt in the Shema. Every single Kiddush, sanctification of every Sabbath and every festival mentions leaving Egypt. The beginning of the first of the 10 Commandments is, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. This is the core central motif of Judaism, because Judaism is a system, especially as illuminated through Kabbalah, to help us stay awake, to stay free, and to live in a more divine, creative, infinite potential way, and realize that potential and manifest that. So compassion and being able to listen is also about stepping back so we don't get so trapped in our stories and our narratives. It's the ability to have a softer view and lens on an impulse and a trigger, that we see something and feel so strongly about it because we believe and see something in a certain way and frame. And so by developing and using sound and listening in different ways, we tune in to our more divine essence and that transcendent aspect to be able to be more free in our lives. And it's very important to find a metaphor to make that state of consciousness, which is an abstract metaphysical thing, to make it more real. A metaphor makes it more real. And there are many different metaphors that we can use. One is stepping onto the balcony. Another one is zooming out. How can I see this differently? How can I step back and be more free and dance with different lenses and ways in how I'm seeing something? So what you have now is an intrinsic connection between cultivating conscious listening and compassion, which allows us to step back, and the freedom to not be trapped and enslaved to the limited ways that we see the world through.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, I'll leave you with these words from Albert Einstein. Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving.